Welcome, everyone. It's Craig Fisher, and I am thrilled to be here. As always, I've got Andre Boulais with me for this Cnect broadcast. We are today talking about campus recruiting and early career tips. And we've got a special guest today with us, Elaine Davidson. Elaine, how are you?
I'm great today. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. So, why don't we just take a brief second? Would you introduce sort of yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. So, as you said, Elaine Davidson, I've been in this fabulous talent acquisition space for probably going on like 30 years, believe it or not, in some way, shape, or form. I am the founder of Beacon Lane Consulting. We are a global consultancy. We do HR executive search and we do contract sourcing. So companies who are usually companies who have recruiting teams internally but don't really have dedicated sourcing tends to be the ideal partner for what we do. And we've also done our fair share of what we'll call recruiting optimization.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's all near and dear to my heart. I do a lot of the same stuff, and I like operations partners. I think it's sort of an unsung hero in recruiting and talent acquisition. It's the space where there's not usually a person in an organization to do those things, right? And
Yes.
and you're connecting dots. You're holding rubber bands together while things get done. You're managing vendors. You're doing all kinds of fun stuff. And we always hear great things about you. And you are a board member of Cnect, and
I
so
am.
we are
Yeah.
thrilled to have you here.
I love being part of the board. Prior to starting Beaky Lane, I spent 20 years in the corporate space leading these kinds of functions. So it's really nice to be able to blend the experience that I had over that time and kind of seeing it from the other lens now, getting inside of different organizations, really kind of seeing it from the inside out. And what I'll say, and it's been said before, but there are just kind of global truths to recruitment. And so, while industries may vary, and what people are looking for in terms of talent and skill, at the end of the day, we're all looking for best fit talent in the least amount of time at the most cost effective in the most cost effective way we can. So, kind of those are common denominators, and so I love that we're now being able to blend technology like Connect with that. With kind of that truth, that evergreen truth about recruitment.
Right, right. Well, so we'll do a quick shout out to David Marr. Hi, David. How's it going? Great to see you here.
Dave
Um,
was one of the first mentors I had when I was brought in to build the global sourcing team for Exact Target, and then later Salesforce. First source kind I went to in 2012. David was there, and we've kind of him, Dinah Whitechurch. A lot of us have kind of this like Chris Russell, this internal SourceCon crew. 12 years later, all keeping in contact and trading strategy. So always good to see him on there as well too.
it is fun, and some of my best picks from events, and I've been going to events now for I don't know in this space 20 years. Come from SourceCon just because it's always had the cool iconic logo and they do the big thing on the wall, and I'm a big fan. So Dave, great to see you. We've got Andres is on too. Hi, look at him
Nice.
checking out. Check out Connect's website,
Yes.
connected.com. He's just going to post that there. Okay. All right. So our topic today, we're talking about early careers, and we've got in this country a skills gap, right? We know that uh, up to 50% of U.S. jobs are going to require reskilling because of new technology, automation, et cetera. And so, can you reskill 50% of your workforce, or are we going to have to find uh, earlier career talent that is already developing these skills, right? And so, I think that's one of the main daunting things that are facing us, right? We've got an aging workforce, and so we've got to be able to recruit young while upskilling an aging workforce. It's going to be an interesting trick. So I've got some questions I'm going to put out to Andre and Elaine, and we'll start here. welcome again, everyone. Thanks for being here. So what are the key trends shaping campus recruiting today, and how can tools like Cnect help streamline the process for both employers and job seekers? So Elaine, let's start with you if you're cool with that.
Yeah, totally cool with that. So when I think about trends in recruitment, particularly in campus, it might be true either, even for experience, but I kind of look at it in two different buckets. One is at the organizational or enterprise level, and then one is at like the recruitment team level. So, because there are certain things that while recruiting has a say, there are certain things that you need an organization to influence. So things that I would say are top of mind for trend would be employment brand, right? A recruiting team needs an employment brand, but the organization needs a brand. And brand is probably one of the most important things right now around how you're showing up, how candidates can or maybe won't align with the company values, the culture, if it feels right to them. So I would say employment brand, that employee value proposition. And I know people probably don't love talking about this topic, but it's real, and it's, I think, here to stay. Is kind of like, I think that early career talent is looking for that hybrid model still, and the conversation has to be at the table, and people want to know, what is this going to be like for me? Is there hybrid? Is there not? And I just think that's an organizational decision. That's not a recruiting decision. And whatever the talking points are around that, that needs to be known. So I'd say at a company level, employee brand, value proposition, what is the work structure going to be like? And then at more of kind of at the department level or the function of recruiting, I think we're looking at the process, right? Like, what is that process from beginning to end, and how much of that process is, we'll call it a time suck that is taking recruiters away from what I still believe is and will forever be important, and that's that human element of recruitment. So I think it's the process, it's being able to assess for fit, certainly technical fit, but again, kind of someone's ability to adapt, to communicate, to navigate complex environments. And then the one that is not a surprise at all, but we're talking about digital natives, and how is the recruiting team meeting this digital native generation where they are? So recruiting, I actually think that where you see the company and the department coming together is that companies, leaders that I work with, at least our firm works with, they want to hear from recruiting. They're relying on recruiting to be the voice, the experts, to tell them what's needed. Because in the absence of that, they're probably just going to make some assumptions. So I think it's really important for recruiters, recruiting teams, recruiting leaders to be that voice around what does a digital native candidate need and expect in a recruiting process.
Yeah, I think you're right. You said a bunch of interesting things there. I am seeing employer brand resurface, right? Yeah. In a big way. So for a couple of years there, it was really an employer market, right? I mean, 21, 22 banner years for employers. Couldn't find enough talent, but also, didn't have a problem getting people to apply to jobs. And then, jobs started kind of going away, and employers, weren't really advertising as much. So, different scenario, but, now there's definitely sort of a shortage of talent, even though employers get, 100 applicants for a job. They're often, if it's an easy apply, not the right applicants. They haven't been screened properly.
Yeah.
We're not asking the right opt-in questions, at the Indeed level or the LinkedIn level very often. And then digital natives, right? Speaking to people the way they want to be communicated with is critical. So, I liken our little app Cnect to either a Slack or a Teams type experience, right? Where you can send video or attachments or messages back and forth in real time to kind of get first and second round interviews out of the way, which is which is fantastic. And candidates seem to love it. And employer brand, a big part of it is candidate experience, right? What does it feel like to interact with the organization and to apply for a job? It's not just pretty pictures and pretty words on advertisements and the way job recs are written anymore. It's candidate experience is a huge part of employer brand because people talk, and there are all these websites like Blind that apps, where people go discuss the experience. So I think I'm having fun with your direction on this so far. So Andre, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Elaine hits a lot of really good points. I loved your talk about the hybrid workforce. Obviously the ripples this week from Amazon's news as well, the return to office. I was actually talking to a head of early career programs for a 100-year-old Fortune 50 company last week, and I won't give out his name, but amazing company. But they are actually doing a series this week on internships where they're having their ERGs present to their potential interns. So they're having the ERGs show the culture and show all the different groups you can be a part of as part of the subculture. And that was really interesting to kind of sell not only just the role you're coming into, but the community you're going to be a part of as well too. And I think, we're really seeing with the digital native kind of is a way of expressing that, being in more of a personalized environment, because I think you have an entire generation that's not going to be defined by just being a piece of paper on a resume. They're a true human, and going after those human elements are going to be critical to evolving kind of how we attract, engage, and hire a modern workforce. So I loved hearing you say that. I'll dovetail into one thing as well too. The last few weeks I've talked to folks from Fortune 50 companies, from technology, but as well as skilled trades. They're starting to go into the high schools. There's so much more put into like getting in front from a candidate and from an employer brand standpoint and candidate engagement at the high school level to get an edge on everyone else as well too. So the idea that you're now cultivating long-term relationships for your hires 2 to 3 years out. I mean, when I was at Salesforce as the head of sourcing, we were a little crazy, but we had a 3 to 5 year plan and we stuck to it. We had a good idea of what the trends in the market were, and we didn't hit it all the time, but we were very close to that 3-year plan, but we always had a 5-year direction. I think more companies are realizing they can't be caught flat-footed when all of a sudden things shift. We saw a lot of folks leave during the pandemic, a lot of changes happen, and all of a sudden, workforces were really limited. So having that talent pool ready to go, thinking out strategically of where the market's going, and dealing with the large workforce that's aging out of different opportunities is really critical.
Yeah. And, you talk about internships, and that was one I didn't talk about, but that is so critical. And we hear about early identification and how many touch points do you have with candidates or before they even become candidates, prospects, right? Which is something we love about Cnect, right? So to really make connection with people and being able to understand who they are, maybe before they even become a candidate, and kind of that relationship that, know, like, and trust is already there. But I think for companies, recruiters, really expanding on your definition of internship. Some of the big firms, the big consultancies, they've been doing this, but really thinking about how do you define internship, right? It doesn't have to be this, 8-week program over the summer. There's lots of different ways to engage early career professionals. And after that engagement, it's about continued engagement, right? So after the internship or that experience, it's this continued engagement and really making sure that you're able to measure the touch points that you're having, because if it gets measured, as we all know, if it gets measured, it gets done, or it should get done. If not, somebody's in trouble. So, but yeah, so going back, and I love what you said about high school. For all of us who have children, we're really seeing kind of a rise of the focus on students who may decide to not go to 4-year college. They may decide other career paths for them, and really opening doors and avenues for those students. It's super important. And again, Cnect does a great job with that. So I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point.
Well, I love that you said that. One of the things the last 10 years, there's a high school fellowship where they take high performing high school seniors, and the gap between graduating high school and going to college, they do tech internships. And I've had over a dozen interns, and it's great. Some of them are now from Fishers, Indiana, are now in Paris, Amsterdam, all these great careers. But the resumes that we get now from, where it was 10 years ago, where I don't have a resume, hey, I've only done launch. Now it's like, I'm a CEO, I'm a COO. My friend and I are both co-founders of a company. So many more folks coming out of high school have quite a bit already done from a business standpoint as well too. And they're really thinking about, how am I setting myself up for my future? So they're going into college saying, hey, I run 3 companies. I transitioned my lawn care business to 2 other owners, and now they're running this, and I get and it's insane the way that folks are starting to think with a business mindset at that high school level, and it's great for employers to capitalize on that as well too.
Yeah, I mean, turn on like Instagram or anything, and you see entrepreneurs, they're younger and younger every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, my senior in high school asked me, how do I create and advertise a Facebook page for lawn care? And I said, well, you do some research, watch some YouTube videos, and figure it out. That's how you do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's
And
it.
he said, that's perfect. That's how I learn things. I'm like, okay, that's great.
That's so
Well,
cool.
and
Yeah.
I think it's funny too. Our VP of customer success is daughter's 15, and she actually made a Cnect profile for her babysitting business. And so she could literally send the digital link out of like, here's my references, here's why I'm a good fit, here's my price range, all of that in her digital profile. And she could have a nice little video introducing why she'd be a great fit to babysit kids in the neighborhood. Obviously, nobody else had that, so she was able to get pole position on all the other babysitters and corner the market really. But I mean, it's a funny story, but it's real, right? She's 15 years old and she's able to use a tool to do that. I think it speaks to where the market is going, and the way to communicate and interact is rapidly changing. And I think it's always good to be at the front of the wave versus the back of the wave. So
Definitely.
Well, so the cool thing about having that link to your Cnect profile, if especially in that situation you just described, Andre, is that you can put it anywhere, right?
Yeah.
The link doesn't have to be put into an Indeed job application. You can post it in any group, right? Parents groups.
you could have it linked out to your LinkedIn page. You could share it on social media. You could text it to different people. You could even have a QR code over little signs of the neighborhood. Scan the QR code and it pops into your little profile as well too. So it really opens up a bigger world of opportunity for the job seeker, but also for the employer side. You're able to have a much larger talent pool come into your network as well too, which is really good.
Well, and imagine if you're hiring, a house sitter or a dog walker or childcare, and being able to see an introduction video from that person and get to know them a little bit, right? Even if you're posting your link on the Nextdoor app, where people go to look for services like that all the time, that is a great way to introduce yourself and get ahead of everyone else.
Yeah.
And I love that you say that. I'll give a quick personal story. So I was introduced to a good friend of mine introduced me to a talent acquisition leader. We had a meeting last week. Unfortunately, when we met, she found out that she was being downsized along with the rest of her recruiting department in a few days. And so I let her know I was going to be talking to a global head of talent acquisition for a Fortune 50 company. And I said, hey, if you want to build a Cnect profile and do a quick pitch, this is his name, this is his role, if you want to do that. And so I met with him, had the conversation, said, hey, at the end, just a personal favor, I had someone very interested in working for your company. Here's her video. She had a 30-second tailored video addressing him directly, telling him why she was a good fit. And he's like, she looks like she's a great fit from her Cnect profile for 3 or 4 roles we have here. Let's be in touch really quickly. She's all of a sudden bypassed the line where who knows, AI might have screened her out if she did the traditional applicant tracking process. But by her to humanize, tell her story in a succinct 30 seconds and really be personalized with that, she was able to jump the line in order to go to the top of the table. So I think it's a really clever way to stand out from just being a piece of paper to being the authentic human that you are.
100%. So Justin says a good job requisition or job description can really attract the right candidate and make them feel comfortable marketing themselves properly and establishing that early relationship. He likes our talk track so far and loves the conversation.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. When you are able to, first of all, understand who your audience is when you're writing a job description, right? What's the persona that you're writing that ad for, and speak their language when you write that job description is huge in making them feel comfortable in both applying to the job and marketing themselves better. And then, in the case of a Cnect candidate, where they've got their cool digital profile built, and you can have that asynchronous back and forth communication. And I could, as a manager, just say to that person, right, hey, Justin, thanks for sending your profile. I love what you're doing. Tell me a little bit about your passion for this and that. And, right away we see candidates jumping in, creating videos to answer questions and really talking about, what's in their heart for, different kinds of jobs, which is great.
Yeah. And I think people really like as well too. We hear from employers, they enjoy the idea that they could have an AI job description, right? The fact, there's great to see Megan. There's great to see also that you can do all of it from the employer app on your phone. So for as an employer, you can have it from your phone. As a candidate on your phone as well too. But from an employer, I can say, hey, Cnect, write me a job description for a sales development intern. It'll literally, the AI will write a job description on the spot that I can then put out there as well too. So I think that extra layer is really helpful also.
Well, should we look at what one of these digital profiles looks like real quick?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so I'm going to show my screen.
Awesome.
Share my screen. There we go.
Yeah, the trend towards high school has been very interesting to see so much invested in kind of that stage. But all those folks already have their own digital footprint, right? They've got TikTok, they've got Instagram, they've got sometimes
All of it. Yeah.
Like you said, here's my small business Instagram, here's my personal Instagram. Here is just having everything out there as well too.
Yeah. And it's fun, like for parents out there, it's so fun doing it with your kids, like starting these little businesses, and I don't know, it's just a cool way to kind of learn with them, and also obviously have good quality time, which we all want.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So this is what a Cnect profile looks like. This is my profile, and I actually applied to a job here at Cnect with it, which is fun. Since I've added my details about what I do here at Cnect, but when I first went to apply to this job, the application took me to a screen that said, "Hey, upload your resume or give us some profile details." And in 10 seconds, Cnect built this sort of amazing looking, beautiful thing that is just better looking than any resume I ever built. And AI matched all these skills that it just pulled from my experience, which was kind of crazy. And I've done a lot of different things, right? And it's sort of hard to lay out and make understandable to employers sometimes, and Cnect organized everything. It's really cool. But then also my first impression video, let's see if we can hear this.
This goes back to my point about documenting things well, right? As recruiters, as business people, as employees, whatever, you should be.
All right, so it's pretty awesome. I can have multiple versions of videos, and I can also have multiple different profiles. So if I wanted, for instance, to share my profile with different employers and have a different version of it, so like one is chief marketing officer, one is employer branding lead, one could be talent acquisition leader. Those are all things that I do. I can't do that on Indeed. I can't do that with LinkedIn. You only get one profile in those places. But with Cnect, you get this cool option for multiple profiles, and you can share it with any employer. It doesn't have to be an employer on the Cnect network. You can share it with anyone. And I'll show you a cool thing. When you do decide to share it, you can name the different places you're sharing it to. So I'm going to share this with Elaine, and I'm going to turn off my first impression video because I think she's biased about videos. And I'm going to turn off my education because I don't think that she likes Sooners from Oklahoma very much, right? And then I can change the layout of my profile, and when I preview it, it's just got the very specific things that I want to send to her. And basically it creates a beautiful ATS friendly PDF that you can upload to any system, and it saves all that information under specific applications. So right, I've got all the information about where I've submitted my resume, and all my profiles, all my different videos. So it's a great place to kind of store your life, your work life, and as a way to share it with anyone. And so when I show this live stream to my senior, I'm going to tell him, look, go make your profile and put it all over the Nextdoor app so people can see your beautiful personality and see how trustworthy you are with their lawn care. That they'd be honored to have you.
And it's funny too, because we had a use case recently. We had an employer that was hiring for a bartender position, and there was a recent college graduate that had a Cnect profile, and she had a video for her major to try and get jobs in that major, but also saw the bartender and said, I'm going to make a personalized video for that. Did that, applied, and said, hey, she was a 47% match on the AI for her skill set, but the video really stood out where she's like, hey, I know I'm not a fit perfectly for this position, but I'm going to tell you why I'd be a great addition. I just graduated from college. I'm 22 years old. I know my way around a bar. Here's my favorite drink. Here's how I make it. The hiring manager loved her, loved the video, brought her in, hired her. Now she's the most popular bartender they have. She's really good at it. She's, we'll see what happens with the rest of her career, but she's really enjoyed something where she might still be looking for a job if she hadn't been able to pivot, have multiple videos for the things that she's going after, and to show her authentic self and why she'd be a good fit.
I feel like, let's see what Megan says. This tech feels like a game changer to create efficiencies and eliminate inherent bias. It is. It's great. Seamlessly creating a long-standing filing system for recruiters and hiring managers. It does. I love that. Yeah. And, Megan and I did a podcast together about the experience of applying to jobs these days, which is not very good in most cases, right? There's a lot of ghosting. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of waiting for nothing to happen. Jobs just close and you don't ever hear about it. And it creates some anxiety. And I think today's job seekers are really looking for some level of personalization to have a way to stand out so that they don't have to get in that queue that is just forever and never ending. And so they can send an employer something that actually, personalizes their application and helps them to be a little more than just the average, 100 job seekers that aren't actually accurate for that job that might apply. Elaine, you got thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think what's coming to mind for me right now is, you go back historically, call it 20 years, 30, however long you want to go back, and very manual process, and eventually technology had to play its role. And like most things, the pendulum swings maybe too far in a direction, right? So we infused technology. Everybody got really excited, as we should have. And then we've got to come back to somewhere in the middle where we're able to merge the technology with the human aspect of it. And I feel like that's what we're talking about now, is that we're using technology to still create efficiencies, but to also address the human part of this. I think there's far fewer people who have this really, what we'll call ideal sequential career than there are, the majority of people who have had some sort of weird break in their resume, or they had some hiccup job that didn't work out and it makes things look funky on their resume, and they want a chance to explain it and put a voice to it. That's what this does. And I think that's important. I think it's not surprising that the pendulum swung this way. Everyone loves tech. You're going to be at the HR Tech Conference. It's so cool. Lots of great things. But you really instead of taking incremental steps forward, I feel like Cnect really catapults things. And you always need somebody to lead that. And I do feel like that's what Cnect is doing in bringing back that human piece, not just for candidates, by the way. So yes, giving a voice to candidates, but also hiring managers, and also recruiters who now we'll talk about the efficiency part, also recruiters who now actually get to spend more time actually connecting with, and I'm no pun intended, but actually really connecting with candidates. So I feel like it's really holistic in that sense.
100% agree. I think being able to measure engagement is so critical, right? And to have that more human conversations, get to the quality, get the operation, take care of the administrative stuff, but still treat every applicant like they're the only applicant, right?
Yeah.
If he or she applies and you ask them to do a digital first impression video or respond and they don't, well, the system will reach out a day later, and eventually after like 4 or 5 days, we'll say, hey, we really love that you applied. We've asked you several times. If it's not the right fit, we'll give you the next day to do your first impression video or respond. If not, we'll go ahead and put you into disposition, but we really hope you apply again. We really appreciate you doing that. But instead of somebody just going into a black hole, which we all have friends that have applied in the last few years, where there's a lot of folks that just are done applying for jobs. They're so frustrated with just like not hearing back and going into that. It's really disillusioned a lot of professionals as well. So just to have that human element of a touch point and to engage, I think is really, really powerful.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Elaine, you probably do this too. I apply to jobs for a living. I mean, my whole consulting practice is based on the inefficiencies of employers. So I'm constantly applying to jobs to leak test their systems and say, hey, by the way, you might want to check the timing on this. This canned response message seems, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, exactly.
There's right, and it's not getting better most places.
No, I just had a good friend that was a VP of TA, one of the most famous companies in the world. You know their name if we said it. You probably use it to travel and stay places. He got responded to for a job 9 months later. He's like, for a VP position, he's like, I don't remember who you are. They're like, oh, you applied. He's like, when did I apply? They're like, 9 months ago. They're like, 9 months ago. Like, it's just, it's crazy.
Right. So, if you're a Cnect candidate, you get notified every time something happens. So if you become a silver medalist, you get notified about that. And, clearly that's what happened in the situation you're talking about there, Andre. Yeah. They moved in a different direction, but they never let anybody know. And then they came back to that candidate as a silver medalist. And that's, I don't know, it's ridiculous communication.
I mean, obviously there's a level, we're not talking so much about this right now, but for organizations, there's obviously the level of choices and customization to turn on and turn off what kind of communications you want to be shared. Some people are camera shy and they rather do audio. We talked about that yesterday, Andre, with somebody. It's not for everybody, but there's options.
I like it when there's options.
Yes.
I think we have found traditionally, our engineering candidates do not like to do a first impression video across all of our companies. But what's funny is once they're engaged for answering questions via text early on, once they're a little bit in the process, we say, hey, we love that you're in the process. Before we bring you on site, we would love for you to show how you solve this problem. If you want to turn on your video, you can. You don't have to. But for whatever reason, at that point, you give them the choice. They turn their video on. They go, here's how I solve for this. And all of a sudden, we've got, so we're right. If we've got engineers engaging with video, we're doing something right.
Yes.
But
it's much easier to answer an engineering question by speaking to it than trying to write it out.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's sort of where they tell us that they, really like that part of the interview process is where, I can just make a quick video about, that question and send it.
Yeah.
And so sort of the back and forth communication that you get with a connected employer and a connected candidate is fantastic. So Andre, do you want to talk a little bit about that piece real quick?
Yeah, I think as far as getting the real-time feedback, I think it's critical. We had a story recently where we had a military veteran that was a wounded warrior, transitioned from the military, and he was surprised where they actually awarded him with a free home for he and his wife and their 2 children. Now, amazing gesture, the great video production of it. It gives you chills every time you watch it. But, hey, Jody, great to see you, my friend. I'll see you in San Francisco sometime soon. But he was moved to a small town in rural Indiana. So, here's this great story where he was given a home, but he's transitioned from the military where he was very successful. We shared an open role in the town that he was from, and he reached out to me immediately and said, hey, Andre, I'm a wounded warrior. I've got a free home. I've not been able to find a job or hear back in 4 months. We shared a job with him. He applied, and within 72 hours, he was fast-tracked as a finalist and was able to bypass all the process to come on site for an interview. And they're going to hire him for a couple of different roles they're thinking of for him. But to go from, to be a wounded warrior for our country, to give so much and to be so much so you're awarded your own home for your family, but then not to be able to find any work or hear back after 4 months, and to do that, and then in 72 hours to be able to be engaged with. I mean, he was able to do screening questions, video back and forth, and he was able to do a personality profile, which he crushed. But to have all of that activity to get to the finalist stage in 3 days after 4 months of almost nothing, it just talks about there's a better path out there to help all of these individuals. And I love that we get to be a part of it.
So can you share who the company was that was using the Cnect employer app?
It's a company called Mavpack. It's a company called Mavpack. They are a large warehousing company that's growing like crazy in the Whitestown, Indiana area. Cool. And so again, they are getting ready to hire a large number of individuals. And so again, would highly encourage anybody. We can definitely share the link afterwards as well too. But they have been on a very busy hiring pace, and they love to look at individuals with similar backgrounds.
So we were talking about this communication gap that happens, and I don't think employers do it on purpose, right? And let me tell you what I think happens, and I see this a lot. So, I try to, make employers aware when they're buying software. So you put together project teams to, scope out an RFP for a new applicant tracking system or a CRM. And you do all this due diligence and you get everyone to present to you, and then you select something finally, and you talk through what it should do for the organization and why. And then in your talent acquisition team, you've selected a product, you start to implement a product, and then there's turnover in the talent acquisition team of the employer. And whoever had that institutional knowledge moves on. They don't leave a love letter saying, here's all the important things about this, right? There is some documentation, but it's really, really fuzzy most of the time. And it doesn't really get to the crux of, it should do this, it should do this, it should do this. And if it's not, they're breaking their contract. And then on the other side, with the vendor, they're not trying to do anything wrong either, but they've also had some turnover. And so the team that pitched to you and the team that was originally supposed to be your customer service team that agreed to all this great stuff, well, they've transitioned as well. And so then you get this intersection of nobody knows what's going on and nobody turns on those communication pieces and looks at the timing and the accuracy of how the apply process is supposed to go for a great experience. And it's not really anybody's fault. It just happens, but it does happen on a regular basis. Elaine, what do you think?
Yeah. So we're constantly talking to our clients about key person risk.
Yes.
And transparency and centralization of information. And I mean, it's just a best practice, right? Like these are things that shouldn't be taking up all your time because it should just be standard practice that there's centralized systems, there's processes, there's no key person risk, so that in that example, when somebody exits, it's, you know, you don't skip a beat. So I'm all about, you know, and in recruiting especially, recruiters are notorious, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, for keeping trackers of trackers of trackers, right? Yeah. Well, I have a separate tracker for that. I have something for that. And that's where we start to get into trouble, because that might work when a company is small, but the goal for most companies, if not all, is growth, right?
Yeah.
So as that company grows, that tracker becomes unmanageable, whether it's around standard operating procedures, or it's actually a tracker of, you know, database of candidates, or it's step in status, whatever it might be. It becomes unmanageable. You get, you know, we always talk about automated chaos at Beacon Lane. So that's kind of what you end up with. And so, I mean, I think out of the gate, no matter how small, you need to set up whatever you're implementing, whatever your structure, your process, as if you were that company that has already achieved the growth that you are aspiring to achieve. You have to kind of think from that state of mind, and kind of, it may be on a smaller scale, but you have to still think like that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point.
So Andre, you've managed some pretty large customer service teams for some pretty great software, but sometimes there's just a disconnect, right? And it's not that the software is bad necessarily. It's just that customer service sometimes falls apart due to lack of communication, right? Sometimes there's just a broken relationship. But also, sometimes the software is not great.
Yeah, I've seen all different scenarios, right? So at a previous company, we went through an acquisition of several work tech companies, and you know, here I was over the delivery side of it with our global team, and I found out they had a customer that was spending over $200,000 a year for a solution and a 3-year contract. At the end of year 2, they hadn't used it once. And that was, again, like a disconnect on the customer service side, but also a disconnect because it had 2 different leadership changes where the folks that had advocated for this software, brought it in, had then left, and then somebody else had tried to pick it up and they had left as well too. And it's like, you know, those inefficiencies are just, they're very damaging to companies. Everybody's looking at their bottom line. I like that with our solution, we're able to be very clear from when we present to a potential customer and to turn them on very quickly. The story I shared earlier on the veteran at MAVPAC, we talked to their CEO on a Wednesday at 4 p.m. He signed the contract on Thursday. On Friday before Labor Day, we had their system set up in their career site, and that military veteran was able to see this opening on a social media site on Facebook over Labor Day weekend, and then to be fast-tracked through the process in 72 hours. So, you know, but I think that's clear communication to make sure that the customers understand exactly what they purchased, what they're getting from the delivery standpoint, and then owning it. You know, we're all going to have things where there's a software update or something happens, if there's a little quirk, just making sure that there's clear communication and not running from those kind of situations, really building a partnership with the folks you work with.
So let me make sure I got this straight. The MAVPAC leader bought Cnect on a Wednesday.
On a Thursday. He signed.
And he was set up and ready to go, fully implemented on the next day.
Yeah, within 24 hours.
Not 3 months.
Not 18 months. Not 12 months. I mean, I've been at companies where it was an 18-month rollout, right? 12-month, 18-month for the full ATS CRM texting solution. So so much so that he came back and bought another instance of Cnect for his other company. He's like, I love this so much. I have another company. Like, I need to have this across all of my companies. So they ramped up that company very quickly.
And that's a logistics company. Is that right?
Correct.
So, okay. So we just talked about these communication breakdowns between employer and vendor that do happen sometimes. And then we've talked about length of implementation for new software can take forever. And the in-between time is often not good because the lame duck software is limping along while the incumbent software is, it's not quite happening yet. And imagine being a student or an early careers professional trying to understand what's going on with that employer. And it's like you said, Elaine, it's organized chaos. What do you see as the main frustrations that employers are seeing and that probably candidates are seeing as well when trying to, deal with early careers and campus hiring?
So I would say for recruiters, at least the companies and our clients that we talk to and that we work with, they're still bogged down with process.
Right.
And that process is preventing them from engagement, right? They're not mutually exclusive, right? So this process that they get stuck in, and then some people aren't comfortable with the process. So, and the real key, and we all know with early career talent, is engagement and touch points and conversation. And a lot of these, right, they're students, they're on campus, they're talking all day long, and they're going to information sessions, some in person, some virtual. And for recruiters who are stuck in process, stuck in meetings, right, that engagement becomes incredibly difficult. And that nurturing of the relationship becomes very difficult. I'll put a plug in here because we do sourcing, and there's a reason why we do sourcing, because there is an incredible need. Companies have recruiters, but the expectation for a recruiter to be an exceptional sourcer is, in my opinion, not particularly fair. In some cases, a recruiter can wear both hats, but sourcing is around engagement and nurturing. And when you can have a product like Cnect help you with that, maybe you don't have sourcers, but you need someone to really help with that engagement so that it is human, it feels personal. So I think the frustration is process on both sides, for recruiters and for candidates, right? There's application abandonment for a reason, right? It just becomes just too difficult, too time consuming. Students are busy people.
Too many roadblocks. Conversions plummet. Yeah,
100%. And the thing that, I always talk about, I think is important, is that from a recruiting standpoint, what ends up happening with a lot of recruiters is that they will end up, and no fault of their own, but going for the first fit applicant versus the best fit talent, right? First fit applicant can get the job done. It doesn't mean that they're the best fit talent, but they are just moving at a rapid pace. They're overwhelmed. And so first fit applicant gets the job done, gets the hiring manager what they're looking for, but it's not the best fit talent most of the time. It could be, but it's usually the best fit talent is out there, and that's not what they're getting.
And think how demoralizing it is for the best fit talent applicant that never gets touched or just sits out there in a queue, right? So I think it's a really good point too. I think we saw with after the pandemic, a lot of recruiting teams shrunk. So you've got a lot of teams that are still not fully at full capacity, but they've got more recs than ever. They're handling huge applicant flows. And Craig and I were speaking at an event that he runs. That was an amazing event at Goosehead Insurance in Texas. And one of the folks was a global head of talent acquisition for one of the largest and most well-known motor companies in the world, automotively. And she said every time they post a new rec, their recruiters will get 800 applicants the first day. So there's almost like like, hey, how are we going to get to everybody that applies within 24 hours of this role? Like, we only have so much bandwidth, right? So finding ways to automate, humanize it. Imagine if everybody that applied got a quick video from the hiring manager or the CEO or a leader just saying, hey, thank you so much for applying, Elaine. Just personalizing, or hey, thank you so much for applying. Would love to speed you through our process. Would love for you to answer a quick question via text or first impression video. Hey, tell me why you loved applying for this role. And immediately you have 25 to 30% of the folks that have applied to do that extra step, but you start with that engaged pile and you can still work your way through as well too.
Yeah. The other thing I completely agree. The other thing that I think is really frustrating for recruiting teams and functions and recruiters is they're wearing so many different hats, because as technology is kind of really outpacing, right, the old model, there's a need for obviously recruiters, coordinators, et cetera, but you need somebody focused on engagement, call it sourcing engagement. That needs to be a role, a dedicated role, or people doing that. Also, somebody really dedicated to data analytics, people who understand generative AI and understand how to look at big data and make informed decisions based on data. And recruiting teams, I think, are kind of late to be able to get that embedded into their org structure, to get somebody with that skill set in there. So recruiters are being asked to do things that might not necessarily be their area of brilliance. And then it kind of starts to get diluted. So you've got all this great data that's coming out, but not being used. We know that engagement and nurturing is important, but sourcing is not part of the structure. So already you've got two roles there that are lacking. And so recruiters, I think, are just frustrated in how they're able to spend their time, when we all know that we need them spending their time either working with the business and understanding what their needs are, and connecting with candidates. I mean, those are the two things that really move the needle forward in recruiting. All the other stuff needs to happen underneath somebody else who has that skill set within the recruiting function.
Exactly.
Yeah, where's that rec ops team when you need it, right?
Exactly.
You have to be outsourced.
Yeah.
We were talking to you, I was going to say,
you made a distinction earlier about recruiters who have trouble with sourcing, right? And I think a lot of internal recruiters that have only done that aren't necessarily taught sourcing like third-party recruiters are. And they're also not taught what to do with data to be a better talent partner, right? And third-party recruiters sometimes have an advantage there as well. And this is nothing against internal recruiters who've never done staffing or third-party recruiting. This is just what the job is today. And but now the job is being stretched into talent management and all these other things. And if I'm the recruiting manager, I need to have one-on-ones with all my recruiters. I need to know what's going on, and I need to have them all in a group telling me what's going on. And so there are all these meetings that stack up during the day and leave very little time for actual recruiting and relationship building. All right, I'm sorry, Andre, you go ahead with your story.
No, you're exactly spot on. I was talking to a recruiting leader the other day that their team is spending 50 to 60% of their time just going through applications and trying to source and screen, and they still can't get to everybody. And they stepped back and said, wow, this is costing us like $2.25 million a year. And it's like, well, what if we had a solution that was much more cost effective than it handled? What if we just reduced 25% of that time and got through the beginning levels of screening? Then our recruiting team could have more quality conversations with engaged applicants. Like, all of a sudden it becomes, you're putting your recruiters what they like to do the most, have human conversations with individuals that are already pre-qualified and be able to go that way as well too, while still giving everybody a much better touch point of touching them multiple times throughout the process. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future, because we're already seeing the results really transform organizations that have gone with this.
Well, so it's interesting. We're talking about candidate who can fill the job first to fill, often gets the job and maybe not be the best fit candidate, which I think is a fascinating concept, because in early careers in campus recruiting, very often these jobs are almost evergreen and you're constantly hiring for that role, right? And so the problem is employers go do a search and they buy data from Indeed or LinkedIn or wherever, basically, and they repeat that spend on an almost daily basis by posting advertisements and things like that. So and they're not they're not building a community of talent that they can keep in touch with. Here, I'm going to show you something again right here. So this is what the Cnect employer app looks like. When you go to employer.connected.com, that's our version. This is my basically employer site. Right, you have all your jobs, and interestingly, you can just easily move people through swim lanes, by drag and drop, and you can score them and you can comment on them. But what's fun about this is, let's say we're looking at Allie. You can constantly be in communication with Allie about various things to keep her warm or interested. If I wanted to right now, I could create a video to say, hey Allie, thanks for sending your profile, that was great, can you tell me about your salary expectations? And we have these ongoing discussions. But also, here's my talent pool. If I'm looking for my intern pool, right, it's right here, and I can communicate with these people individually or all at once if I want to. There's all kinds of fun things that you can do with a mini candidate pool for whatever type of role that you're recruiting for. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of that.
I love that story. We've got a CPA firm that's they've grown tremendously in the last 4 months because they've Cnect has been a great solution for them to solve for their hiring. But they've got multiple roles where they get such a quality of candidates within 30 minutes of posting the role through Cnect across the various channels that they just shared, hey, I made a great hire, but I have 3 others that I want to hire that are all there. And I told them, I'm going to hire each of you throughout the year in the next couple of months as we grow and scale our business. So he's like, I already have a crucial role with 1 hire and 3 hires teed up for the rest of the year, that every time I hire you to a certain level, I bring in the next person and the next silver medalist. But I can engage with them the entire time, and I let them know ahead of time. And hey, if they find a job, they can let me know as well too. But he's already got a great pool of qualified folks for a highly skilled position that'll help his CPA firm grow as it scales. So yeah, I think it's really tremendous.
Yeah, we always like to say, like, we don't like requisitions starting at 0.0.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's every time we talk about it, it shouldn't start at 0.0. There's a database of people who have expressed interest.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there, and if not them, then they know somebody. So tap into that. Yeah. And that's kind of goes back to what you were just saying a few minutes ago around sometimes recruiters just haven't been taught, right? Like what are kind of the ABCs of sourcing, of nurturing relationships and engagement. And it's a blend of the technology and the human outreach and how you're communicating. What is your headline when you're reaching out to people? So it's a lot of different pieces, but no, there's no reason for most requisitions to start at 0.0.
Yeah, every time when I ran sourcing for Salesforce, every time we came in to do a new rec, we'd always start with like, who are the silver medalists from last time, right? Who do you recommend? Who are your ideal profiles? What do you want to change? They might say, hey, model somebody just like Elaine. She's perfect. Or they might say, hey, we have 5 awesome Elaines. I want somebody different. I want somebody more like Craig. I want someone more of a disruptor to come in and do X, Y, and Z. But it was critical to start with those folks that had already come through because, like you said, why start at 0 if you've got to say a 7 or 8 step recruiting process? Why not start at the folks that are 80% finished? They've already got to the finish line. They passed every single test. They were just maybe the second or third option.
Right. Exactly.
I saw Glenn Cathy at RegFest last week, and he's sort of the godfather of sourcing, him and Shally, I suppose. And Glenn used to say that you're always sourcing for every rec. You're always doing a new sourcing function each time, but the first place you should be sourcing is your own database, right? You've already paid for that data. You've already run the ad and invited candidates to come be part of your world, and they opted in. So why are you not sourcing there first?
Yeah, it's a warm pool. Let's start with the warm talent pool, right? So
well, it is if you can keep in communication with them, I suppose.
Yeah,
I think that's what kind of goes back to that. Like what does the recruiting org structure today look like in 2024? What does it look like, and what should it look like, and how big is that gap? Because that is a job, right? That is a job of how are you staying engaged with that community from a recruitment lens. And if you don't put somebody on that job, it's going to kind of get pushed to the side of the desk. So I think that if you have this database of people who you know are interested, and you don't have a way to stay in touch with them, a way to connect with them, stay top of mind for them, you're going to lose. You're going to, they might take another job right now somewhere else, but the next job after that, it could have been your organization, but you didn't have any kind of trail, of way of staying in touch and engaged. And I think as time goes on, we're going to see more and more of that. And the companies who aren't doing that are going to feel that. I really do believe that.
I think that's a great point. I think it's also pretty powerful to realize that you don't have to be a giant logo or a brand. If you've got a solution that lets you, automate the process and hire 80% faster, you've got pole position, right? By the time somebody can get back for schedule a first round interview 3 weeks later, you've already hired the person, you win, right? That's how you take down a bigger company using a much more archaic system. So it really lets companies of all size kind of punch above their weight. We hear punch above our weight quite a bit with our, smaller to mid-sized customers, but we love that. Hey, I never would have been able to go against, my competitors to hire this person, but hey, we're making really good hires from places we normally wouldn't, because it's so easy and it's so quick and it's so efficient. I think that's a really powerful secret weapon.
Yep.
Secret weapon indeed, right? The best experiences you've ever had is with companies where you don't get the job, but they stay in touch with you.
Yeah.
They're like, on a regular basis, check out our open positions. Hey, we got a coupon for you. We're interested in hearing from you. Take our survey, but also here's what's happening with us. And you can automate some of that stuff, but also the occasional eyeballs from a real person need to be in the process as well. And so I love the idea that automation frees a person or some people up to do some of that.
And I love what you said there, Craig. I know we've got a lot of folks on here from the restaurant hospitality sector as well too, but we've also seen a really cool way to work with a lot of our restaurant customers that when they get finalist candidates that don't get the job, part of their silver medalist is like, hey, we really enjoyed meeting you throughout the process. We loved learning more about who you are. Hey, you know what? You didn't get this opportunity. Stay informed. And by the way, as a thank you, here's a QR code for a free appetizer. Now, more often than not, they're going to come in and bring friends, have an appetizer, have their families, do all that. So it's a soft landing. It feels really good. And it's driving revenue back into the business as well, too. So it's just, it's ways to think about, rejecting somebody doesn't have to be the worst possible scenario. Most folks would say I'd rather be rejected and hear stuff at every stage in the process than never hear anything at all too. So there's a way to make that process and make it still a win and clear a path for a future hire, which I think is really powerful.
Yep.
So there's a story in my book, Hiring Humans, about when I was a talent leader at CA Technologies. We didn't have fancy enough automation to send everyone a personalized rejection letter back in 2015. So we outsourced it to a couple of recruiting coordinators to send a personal rejection to all candidates who didn't make the cut, but to ask them to stay involved and stick around because there'll be new jobs and other opportunities. Well, I had a guy find me on LinkedIn and send me an email there saying, I got a personal rejection from your company from a job I applied to, and it was fantastic. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I've been applying to jobs at CA for 3 years, and I've never gotten any sort of response. And I said, well, thank God. I mean, hooray. But also, could you come to my office? Are you local? Could you come talk to me about that? He did. Came and sat down with me and told me about his experience. And it turned out that he had been applying to jobs in the wrong part of the company. And we actually had jobs for him and we hired him.
That's awesome.
Love that. So Craig, like that brings back for me two words that always kind of come like I think it boils down to, it's being insatiably curious about people. And that's what makes a great sourcer and a great recruiter, right? Just being insatiably curious about what's going on for somebody. Maybe you don't have the full story. And I know we can't do that with every single candidate. You get inundated, but the idea is progress, not perfection. So how do you keep making progress and having time and bandwidth to be more curious and to learn about people and to kind of extend yourself like that, because something almost always comes of it. It's funny. I was just on a trip, and you guys know a little bit. I was just on a trip with my son. We're visiting colleges, and he's a senior. I have another son who just went off. And so kind of feel like I've become an expert at these college visits. I've done a lot of traveling the last year and a half. And we were debating, like, do we go? Do we not go? Do we go? I said, we're going to go, because he had already, we thought that we had made some conclusions about some of the places we were visiting. And we get there, and a series of events happened that never in a million years could have happened had we not shown up. Just shown up. And I looked at I almost had tears in my eyes. I said, you see what happens when you just show up, good, bad, or indifferent, but you show up and something is bound to happen in one way, like either direction. And I feel like that's true in recruiting and sourcing and for candidates. It's like, just show up and be insatiably curious. Whether you're a candidate, be curious about a company. Maybe as a candidate, you're going to realize all the things you don't want in a company or in a job or in an experience. And same thing for recruiters. Like, you might meet that best fit talent that you never would have ever found had you not been so curious about them. So I just think that being curious, and not just recruiting, in life, right? Like, just something usually can happen. May not be the thing that you thought, but something happens. And I feel like that's true. Like, just the story you just said just made me think of that.
That's great.
I love it. I love it. It's so true. And with that, we will thank our audience for joining us today. This has been fantastic. Elaine, thank you for being our guest. This is really good conversation. We'll make sure to get the link out to everyone in case they had to drop off or in case they missed it. And we'll do this again in a couple of weeks. And we're just going to keep talking about the issues, showing a little product, having a good time, and meeting interesting people along the way, like Elaine. So thank you, Elaine.
My pleasure. Fun being here with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Always good to see you. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.